Does it say recording on your end?
Yes.
All right. All right, here we go. Welcome back to the Maley Way. I am your host, Jim Maley. I met today's guest when she was about 3 or 4 years old. And I'll be honest, it didn't go very well. She saw me. We were up in, I think, Antioch. She saw me. She ran, hid under a table, and started crying hysterically. I believe that was my official welcome to the Jaskursky family. Like everybody was there, large Polish family, grandma, grandpa, my father-in-law, everybody was there. And that was my introduction. Now, a lot of people thought it was hysterical. I thought it was hysterical. But I've spent the last 20 plus years trying to win her over. And I'm choosing to believe that today represents the culmination of a lot of hard work. But all jokes aside, it's been incredible to watch her grow into the woman she is today. What makes this conversation especially meaningful is that she's completing her dissertation on something that she's dealt with herself personally. And she brings both researched and lived experience to the table. And I think that perspective is something all of us, not only young people, but adults alike, can benefit from, particularly her area of expertise that she is focusing on. With that said, I'm excited to welcome my, I guess you would say, cousin-in-law, Maggie Doheny, to the podcast. Welcome, Maggie.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's been a long way to get here, especially with the holidays and everything. But I'm really excited to be here and I'm really excited to talk about my story. Um, I've been dealing with anxiety and other related trauma issues for my entire life. And so I've taken a lot of negative things that have happened to me and turned it into a positive, into a way where I can actually research issues related to what I and many others have gone through and inform society on that. So I'm here to kind of talk about that. Um, but starting all the way back, I guess. I've had anxiety for as long as I can remember, really. It started when I was very young, and I had kind of like an OCD thing where I was very afraid of getting sick. I didn't want to go on field trips because I was afraid I would get sick from being on the bus and things like that. Things that no kids normally think about. Not none, but kids are excited for the field trips. They're not like me, scared the entire time. Um,
Now,
and
at what age was that at? Like when you felt like, I guess I feel bad now that I was kind of joking around about the thing with me when you first met me, but was like that a form of like
no,
the
no,
anxiety? Okay, good, good.
no. Okay. When I was really young, I was just scared of boys in general.
Yeah, me
Your
too.
Katie's neighbor, I was terrified of him too. It wasn't related to that.
Okay, good,
Um,
good. All right.
I was older, I would say in first grade. I remember a kid in my class got sick in class and I literally freaked out. I was like screaming and crying like the world was ending. Obviously, my teacher told my mom. That's when I started therapy in like second grade, and I've been in therapy since then. I still am now, which I'll talk about later. Um, but getting through that, I kind of just got over that naturally, and I'm not really quite sure how. Um, but when I was in about fourth grade is when my parents said that they were getting divorced, which is something that I did not see coming um, at all. And
Mhm.
we were in a very small school, a very small Catholic school, and nobody else in there had divorced parents and things
Mhm.
like that. So I felt just kind of uncomfortable to begin with, and I started feeling like I was different, not in a good way. That nobody could really relate to me, that nobody could really understand me. Um, and that came with a lot of its own issues, just moving back and forth between houses every other weekend and every Wednesday, having two Christmases, all that stuff. And now that I'm older, obviously, it is what it is. It happen, but that was a big shock to the system being little. And I will say that our family was so supportive in that time. Um, we were still going up to the lake every weekend and we were able to maintain that sense of normalcy. However, it was a bit different, and I guess going from our house having the big holidays, doing all the fun stuff, to going to like this little apartment with a bunch of strangers who were kind of scary. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I started feeling like less and less supervised, if that makes sense. I could say I was somewhere and I was somewhere else.
Hmm.
Um, should we pause there? Anything?
No.
Okay.
I think that's good. I think, yeah, it's kind of what I want you to do is kind of, I guess, paint the picture, like particularly like the teenage years.
Yeah.
Because I think it is interesting that like you were still very successful, like you were still academically oriented, like you still did well in school. So from
Yeah.
like an outsider's perspective, it might have been like, oh, everything's going well, like she's doing well, and part of that is, I'm guessing now, I don't know, but just from my experience is that when you're struggling like that, you kind of become really good at acting and like kind of like making it seem like everything's good. Did you have that going on in like those high school years where you felt like you were almost acting your way through it?
Yeah, we can move on to that. So, regardless of whatever I was dealing with, I was always excelling at school. I did not get my first B until my PhD program.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I don't know. I just transferred everything onto that, I guess. But when high school came around, I am coming from this class of 30 to the class of 1,000 plus, being exposed to things that I was never exposed to at my school. I was very sheltered and things like that. And as I started to feel, like I said, less and less supervised, is when I started kind of doing risky things, getting in with the wrong crowds. And I think that was really tied into me wanting to feel like I belong, I guess, that I was a
Hmm.
part of something. Maybe it was just for attention, but things were just generally not great, like in my personal life, I would say. Um, and that's when I started just not liking myself at all
Yeah.
and doing whatever I could to, I guess, defy my parents in a way. I knew my mom would ground me, I would do it anyway. I had like no regard whatsoever about consequences. I was just getting into trouble. I was, like I said, hanging out with people who did not have my best interest in mind. I started getting into like romantic relationships that were not great for me as well. And I think from our family point of view, it's like I'm at the holidays, I'm doing well in school, like you said, but I think in high school I did have, I say I think, I know I had a reputation of being like a troublemaker, I guess. And I look
Yeah.
back now and I think like, I think back to these little things where I knew that like parents would be concerned if their kid was hanging out with me, which is crazy to even think about now because I did like a whole 180, but in reality, I was just like broken, like seeking some type of like validation, I guess is the best way to put it.
Now, were you kind of like with that? First of all, like I didn't, just from an outsider perspective, like I knew there was some struggles a little bit, but I didn't know like to the extent because, like you said, like I knew you were doing well, like in certain respects, and that was kind of more what I was able to see. But in terms of like the crowd that you were starting to hang with, were you kind of drawn to other people who may have been going through similar struggles as you, like you said at St. Cletus, like no one you knew had parents who were divorced. Were you like
Yeah.
drawn to like different groups of people that you felt were more like you in a way?
Honestly, no, I feel like for the first part of high school, I was more of like a nomad where I would go wherever other people were. Like I could not be alone. I could not be missing out on anything. I always wanted to be at the party, I guess, and I would go with people that were not close friends and just do whatever I could to like escape, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so yeah, it was kind of like it was a way for you to kind of defy your parents, like you said, but also it was a way maybe to deal with some other underlying issues that may have been going on as well.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and there was one point where I just felt like everything was like crumbling so badly, and I felt like I was very alone. And I actually took a long car ride with Katie to the cottage, and we were stuck in traffic and we were talking. And it was the first person in the family that I really kind of like said what was going on. Um, and that's where she told me that you were struggling with depression. I think this was in like 2015 or 2016. And just as you said to me, you didn't really know what was going on. I felt like my mind was blown too, in a way. Like I didn't see that. And as you said, you are good at acting when you're going through things because you don't want sympathy necessarily at first before you fully accept what's going on.
Yeah. And I think like what we were saying too is first of all, I'm glad you confided in Katie because she's become an expert in
Hmm.
kind of dealing with this and helping out and knowing what to say and that whole thing. But I think I know like your mom in particular, like uh I think one of the things that's been very impressive to me is like I always think of the Jaskursky family as like tough South Side, like put your nose, like that's what I think of them as. And I feel like your mom, her sister, have been like very open with me, like when I've been doing this, like
Hmm.
about like, hey, I think that's really good. Like I really enjoy what you're doing. It just didn't fit the vibe of what I thought they would be people who would be like, like whatever.
Yeah.
But it seems like your mom at least was on board early in terms of getting you in to like see someone, which I think was probably the right move.
Yeah, she tried her best and I definitely did not make it easy for her at all. And I think she didn't know like where to start, where to begin, what to even do because as far as I know, what I was dealing with and how I was behaving was not something that anyone she could ask, any friends or family had also dealt with. And she was just so afraid that I would like go down a really bad path. Um, so she's always been there for me, honestly. She's done everything she could to support me. She had me in therapy forever. I will say, I think my high school therapist actually hated me because everything she would try to tell me to do, I would do the opposite, and then I would come back and complain about the same stuff. Um, so she tried her best as well, but it was tough. I know it was tough. I feel bad that I put my mom through that. We have a great relationship now. Um, I just think it was so I couldn't at that point like articulate what I was feeling and I didn't have a great way of communicating. It just felt like there was always like my world was always crumbling down. And I do want to say, because I've spoken with other people who, after I've I guess, improved. I've been trying to advise others, and I just know that in high school, it's your first, and just adolescence in general, it's your first experience where you're not a kid anymore and you want to be an adult so bad, but you're not an adult. So you don't have a lot of life experience. So every negative thing that happens to you, you think your life is over, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Because you can't see beyond the people you've grown up with forever. You can't see beyond like the walls of high school and where you go. Um, and so I think it's really important if if anyone's listening with kids going through something similar, or maybe one of your students is listening to this, um, there is light at the end of the tunnel. How you feel in high school, maybe you're feeling excluded, alone, that you don't really belong, that can change. It's not the end of the world as you think it is.
Well, it's funny that you, because I was just about to say that exact thing is that, I even had on a guy the other day. He's a fireman, and he considered himself like the black sheep of the family. And I wouldn't consider you that, but like you obviously had some struggles you were going through. I think it's kind of cool for not only kids but parents to see, like, hey, look, this is Maggie Doheny. She's working on her dissertation now. She's going to get married. When are you getting married? When is that? Is that
July.
Yeah, she's getting married in July. Like, it's not over. Like, it's not the end of the world. And I think for parents need to know that too. Like, yeah, your kid maybe made some mistakes. They're doing things they shouldn't be doing. Like,
Mm,
you can still turn it around and have like a successful life. And I think your story kind of represents that well, which is why I think it's pretty cool. And I think it's cool what you're doing with. We'll get into what you're doing with it, but also I wanted to say one other thing. What year were you in high school? Like, not
So 2013 to 2017.
okay. So you were. I was looking this up. You were right when the iPhone became like where everyone had to have it. Like, I think it was. I was
Yes.
looking it up. Like 2014 is what I saw as the, like, hey, you're kind of weird if you don't have one. Like,
Yeah.
how did that, I can just imagine what kids go through now, and what
Yeah.
you went through, especially when like no one knew how to like react to anything at that time. Like,
Hmm.
how was that, especially as a high school girl, like going through high school with your whole life online, like everybody can see everything. How was that for you?
Yeah. So that all kind of like started up literally as I was getting into high school, as you said. So it became like kind of like a FOMO thing in a way where you had to post everything you were doing, every party you went to, everywhere. And being someone who wasn't going to all of these parties with all of these kids who looked like they were having the best time ever, I'm sitting at home and I'm already feeling terrible about myself, and I'm looking at that, and I'm feeling worse about myself. I'm seeing girls who I think I wish I could look like them and I don't, you know. That's tough for girls, and it's tough for guys too, I'm sure. Especially not I everybody's different, so the stuff that I may be making those comparisons to myself, maybe someone else would not, but I think that that's common. You don't want to feel left out. You don't want to see all of your friends without you doing something that you weren't invited to, and that really hurts. And high school kids are so mean. They will like it's just not all of them. I'm not trying to generalize,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
you can be mean to the point where the way that you would have gotten dissed when you were in high school, now it's intentional, direct at you for everyone to see.
Yeah. And it
Um,
can be, anonymous too, which is what I think. Like,
yeah,
I always, this is controversial, but I always think, like, in terms of bullying, at least back in the day, like, the bully had to back it up. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
mhm,
it had to be like a big dude who could really back it up.
yeah,
And not that that was good. I'm not saying that was good. It wasn't good. But it was better, I feel, than now, where people can put anything they want online and not even have to account for it in any way.
yeah. I actually, in my, I know we're not getting into it yet, but in my dissertation proposal, I literally show a side by side Biff from Back to the Future
Yeah,
and
yes.
then like a girl on a phone and like
Yeah.
bullies. So, yes, but also, when I was in high school is when those anonymous location-based platforms came out, like Yik Yak, which is still popular now, and then for a short time. thank God it did not last long, but there was something called street chat. So if you don't know what Yik Yak is, it's you're fully anonymous. You make a post, anyone in a certain radius of your location can see it. There's no moderation. You could say whatever you want about somebody, and then you watch it get likes and comments, also from anonymous people. Street chat was that with pictures.
Oh my God.
So that was brutal. That was really brutal. And it was almost like this like hive mind culture where like everybody wanted to like do it and you were feeling good getting all these likes even though it wasn't even attributed to you. I remember at the beginning of high school, this is before I had gotten really into like my I guess like downward spiral, I guess is the best way to put it. I was at a concert with my friends and I someone sent me a screenshot from Yik Yak that said Maggie Doheny parents' biggest regret. And I was like, "What?"
Oh
Like
my
I
God.
I didn't know what I was doing that would make someone say that, but I was personally victimized on both of those platforms. And when that happens to you, you're out of you have no control. Like you don't
Yeah.
know who did it, you don't know who's liking it, you don't know who's sending it around, and it has a big impact. And I know I'm not the only one who dealt with that because I saw stuff about other people. Um, so that was just brutal. It was really brutal. Um, and it can
Well,
be
what's
really
funny is I've never even heard of that. Like I never even knew that existed. And that you're
I
saying one of them still exists today?
Yik Yak, I think that kind of died down, but I know it's still around college campuses. I was never on it. I think it might be more popular now. That other one was just a short period of time, thank goodness, as I said. Um, but it was just you can't defend yourself in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And you don't even necessarily have to be anonymous to be doing things like that. If you're behind the screen, it just makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny like I get with the social media stuff is that I know like a lot of it is bad, except I participate in some of it because I feel like I have to get like this message out. You know what I mean? But then
Yeah.
I also know that there's all like, for instance, like I connected with this one guy from this foundation or this organization who, he was like sexually molested and he was going around talking. He was great. And it's like, well, I would have never connected with him unless for social media. So in that regard, it was great because I got to have someone talk about their experience that no one really talks about that type of thing.
Hmm.
And he was willing to do it. But then I know like all this other stuff goes on. And it's like I feel bad that I'm maybe like kind of playing into it in a way, but like I feel like it's the only way you can get information out there right now.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. There's as many pros as there are cons with it. So, I mean, what you're doing now is obviously nothing harmful. It's the opposite. You're trying to connect and help people. So simply participating is not necessarily perpetuating a problem.
Yeah.
Um, it's more so the negative consequences or the negative actions, which we can get into when we talk about what I'm doing now. But
Yeah,
aside from
well,
those, go
let's
ahead.
talk. Well, first of all, let's Maggie. I thought this you were like the first person that I remember making the decision to go down south to a school like Alabama.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get it. We don't need to get into numbers, but I know they gave you a pretty good like if you scored above a 32 or something on your ACT, Alabama was like bringing a lot of money to people from northern states to go down
Yes.
there, which I was like, oh, that is awesome. Like, first of all, who wouldn't want to go down there to Alabama? That must be a great experience, but also, being able to, have a lot of it paid for, like that was pretty cool. And like, I guess, how did that experience? Did that improve things for you from a mental health perspective?
Yeah,
It seemed like it did.
it did. So, like halfway, just backing up a little bit, halfway through high school is where I became friends with my current best friend. And like that's when everything started going on the up and up. I was having like actual friendships, not doing bad things, not feeling bad about myself. I had like a support network of friends. So that really was good. But then when it came time to do college or go to college, I wanted to like go to college with her, you know? Um, and I decided to go to Alabama, which I knew barely anybody going there at all, but it was like clean slate, like I can be myself. Um, it was really scary when I first went there. Um, I was the only one in my dorm area who rushed, so I was like alone. And I'm still scared of being alone, scared I'm not making friends and all of that. And then I got into my sorority, and then I met my, it sounds so cliche, but I met my best friends like on the bid day retreat. Um, so I was having people be my friend for me and not for what they heard about me or saw on Yik Yak or whatever. Um, it was a new start, and that's where I feel like I started to really find myself. I was still struggling with some things deep down, like especially social media in college. So I went from that in high school, just missing out on parties or whatever, to college where there's girls my age with plastic surgery, with G-Wagons, going on these extravagant vacation, wearing all designer. That wasn't great for comparison either.
Yeah.
However, I had my friends there, and my friends were like very similar to me in a way that we were just who we were, I guess. So that helped, but that did go into college, I guess, as well.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of funny too. You talk about the sorority thing. I've started talking a lot about like community and how important that is. Like whatever community that you're involved in. I think older guys like me, we kind of let that slip. Like we let it slide where we're like, we don't hang out with anyone. And like, I feel like we need to do a better job of like forming that community. And you think about like sorority life, you think about like stereotypical stuff, you would be like, well, that might not be that good for you. But there
Hmm.
is that sense, that community. Like Katie, I know, dealt with it at DePaul. Like it was just great for her. She got
Yeah.
to be around all these other people, even when they were doing like, I used to call it like stupid stuff, like when they would have to go do like serenade other people
Yeah.
together, whatever. It was still like, all right, you're doing something together as a group, you're going through
Yeah.
something together. It's kind of like a sports team
Yeah.
in a way. So you had a pretty good experience with that.
It was literally the best college experience I could have ever asked for. I wouldn't change a single thing. It was great. And like with the sorority, I know not everybody ends up where in a place that they like. I was lucky enough to have done that, and like I'm eating lunch and dinner with my friends every day. We're like laughing so hard. We're coming to study together. Like I all my friends lived 5 minute drive away. Like I that's what I miss the most, honestly, just
Yeah.
having everybody in one place. But that was great, and it did help me like grow into myself because I was actually being myself.
Yeah. So did that, do you feel like the community kind of was almost a way to help you with any like anxiety that you had? Like, was that a self-care type thing for you? Like
Yeah.
being involved in that community?
Yeah, we were there for each other. My sorority had about 400 girls, so I'm not best friends with everybody, but like we had a group of like about 10. Um Everyone was always there for each other. If I was sad, I could go to their house and like watch The Bachelor with them, and you're just getting your mind off of it. You're not sitting and stirring in your room, like ruminating over things.
Yeah.
And whenever someone was going through a hard time and talking about it, our group chat would just be going like crazy with like everybody's support. So
Yeah.
that was really great to have.
That's awesome. Well, okay. So let's get into, I guess, what you're doing now, because I think what you're doing now can be very beneficial to people who might be listening right now, either for themselves or their kids.
Yeah,
Um, Kind of, can you take me through a little bit of that? I'll probably interject every now and then to ask you questions.
yeah. So when I was at Alabama, I started researching in a neuroscience lab, and I realized I loved research and I wanted to pursue that as a career. Um, After I graduated, I was at Northwestern for a while working in psychiatry, um, which I didn't ultimately end up going into that, but now I'm at University of Central Florida and I'm in human factors, which is human computer interaction. It's a very broad field. There's human factors engineers everywhere at every company. The laptop that you're on right now, designed by human factors engineers. Uh, Anything, the street signs you see, the signs on the road are all green with the same white font for a reason. That's been tested by human factors engineers. So I have a lot of freedom on what I can do. And at first, when I started, I didn't really know what I wanted to get into, but I started taking my personal experience and applying it into this field, which I used to be like so afraid to do public speaking and all of that. And now when I'm talking about something I love, it's so easy to do that. So I truly love what I'm doing now. But into that, so I study how social presence, which the way I define that is being physically present with another person affects how we behave. So my last, I know that's kind of broad, I'll get into it. My last study was selfish behavior face to face versus Zoom. So I had participants give an amount of money, which it was their money. They didn't have to give any of it. They had $10, they could split it and see how much they would give when they were communicating with someone who was directly across from them in the room, um, or through Zoom. And people are way less generous when they are communicating through Zoom.
Oh, I'm
So
sure. Yeah.
that informs a lot about like telehealth and e-learning and things like that. If your doctor is giving you treatment options and it's over Zoom, it may or may not be the same. You may not feel the same level of empathy. But for my dissertation now, I'm looking at decisions to post negatively on social media when you are anonymous and basically how that's affected by reward. So if I say something super nasty to you and I get 900 likes, am I going to do that again? Am I going to say the same nasty thing if I'm only getting 50 likes?
Hmm.
So I'm kind of testing that in a way to see like, is this based on being anonymous or is this based on getting the reward?
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. So you're kind of trying to figure out, or could be a combination of both, I
Yeah.
guess you could say. Oh, that's awesome.
So,
Well, and what's kind of interesting is that's kind of like you said, that's exactly what you experienced as a high
mhm,
school kid, and
yeah.
you're kind of trying to actually almost, I guess, explain it like in a way.
Yeah. I also have a component of how would you behave if that person who you're sending it to is in the room. So I'm looking at all of that, but it what is this like perfect storm that we have when we're on social media that makes people act in a way that they would not act face to face? So
Yeah.
I guess my dissertation is dedicated to whoever said Maggie Doheny parents' biggest regret on Yak Yak in 2020.
Well, yeah. I mean, even like me, so like when I like post stuff, first of all, I feel like I always say this, I feel like a tool sometimes when I'm posting stuff. But like usually it's all pretty good. Like it's like good, nice stuff. And every now and then I'll still get like a random person that just like says something like super mean. And I'm just like,
Yeah,
I'm like, what is going on? Like, how I just don't get it. Like, I don't get why you would take your time. And I never respond because I'm like, I'm not even gonna bother with that.
yeah.
But it like makes my blood boil a little bit. And
Well, yeah. I'm sure when you do your talks at schools, you don't have like hecklers coming at you, but
No, yeah.
they're doing it online, and I feel like when you're communicating online, like through social media, you're almost like dehumanizing everyone and everything you see, and you're just sending it into the void. And since you're not there to witness their physical reaction, you're not even thinking ahead to that point. And now we have like, for the first time ever, the only people with a platform were like public figures and celebrities and all of that. And now they're in the same space as us. And
Yeah.
everybody wants to be an influencer. And if you look at someone as famous as like Kim Kardashian, I would say a large majority of the comments are probably pretty negative, but that's happening now to these smaller influencers who are just regular people who got a lot of followers, and they don't necessarily have the same coping skills with that. People are reading every single comment, and it's easy for people to be very nasty and negative just simply because that person is not in front of them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be strangers. You could be more blunt or rude to someone that you know via text that you may not say to like a close friend face to face.
Yeah, it's almost like it like negatively impacts empathy in a way. Like you become way less empathetic when you're not. And I think about it from like the Zoom learning, like, and I always want to preface this, like I know the physical illness, people were getting sick or whatever, and I understand all that, but like to me, that was just like devastating it was devastating to my mental health. I can't imagine how devastating that was to like young people's mental health.
Yeah,
But I look back and I feel like the only good thing out of that was it made me aware that, like, hey, I need to talk to people. I need to be around people. Like, I
yeah,
need to do that. That was like the benefit of it, but like there were so many drawbacks to that whole situation that I don't think was really taken into account.
yeah. It's I'm trying to get into this like new area of research, I guess, especially post-pandemic. Like every paper I have that I open with, it's since the pandemic, this is the new norm. It's been around before, but the use dramatically increased. And like I said, it's a double-edged sword. So during mandatory isolation during COVID, using our phones was like the only way that we could communicate with people. If we didn't have those, we wouldn't be able to stay in touch with family members, friends, especially like older adults who are limited in like transportation and they were really at risk and all of that. So it was good for that. Um, and it was necessary, but there was a lot of negative impacts on e-learning because multiple things. Parents had to become the teacher as well.
Hmm.
Parents, a lot of them working from home, trying to maintain their job while also making sure that their child was engaging in school. If I'm sitting here with my camera off and you're trying to teach to me, you don't know what I'm doing. I could be sleeping. It's the same thing as like sending negative comments online. Um, there's something in between us right now, and that's a screen. And that's how it is. It adds like a layer that makes the social connection less prevalent, I guess, and motivation decreased. There's a lot of issues with the telehealth. My lab at my university, we focus a lot on older adults, and technology is rapidly evolving, so it's difficult for them to even keep up with it if they're not super tech savvy. Some are, some aren't, but it's difficult because you want to be able to trust your doctor, you want to be able to trust your teacher, but it's really hard to communicate that through the screen, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even so now there's stuff with like the online therapy, and I do see one benefit of, like, my buddy was talking about it and he was saying, like, it was really good to get his son to go for the first time. Like,
Hmm.
because, all right, I don't have to go to the doctor. I don't have to leave my house. Fine, I'll do it. And he was like, that was great to get him going and get him doing.
Yeah.
And I understand that. But then it's like, there is that element to like the human interaction that I think is probably missed through the screen.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of the negative effects seen, especially with children and screen time, it's not necessarily from the screen itself, but it's that taking away from important in-person activities.
Yeah.
That's part of it, but I have a whole paper on this. It's in Frontiers. It's called Social Cognitive Neuroscience in the Digital Age.
Well,
There's
let's hear some of your. I do want to hear some of your, like, because I think this is important, and I think, we're debating when is the time where the kid should have the phone. I'm also debating, like, if it's between one of two evils, like video games or the phone. I almost think video games is the way to go. Like, at least there's not all this like information readily available. And I think that's one of the, I think that causes, I think too much information causes a lot of anxiety for kids.
yeah,
Like, it was kind of even like something like an Amber Alert. Like, when we get those on our phones, it like immediately causes that anxiety in all of our kids, where it's almost like, and I don't want to say it's better not to know, but for some things it's like better not to know certain, not to be able to
yeah,
have information at your
yeah.
disposal.
And
But I want to hear what your thoughts are on all of that, all the phone
yeah,
stuff.
it's endless scrolling. It never ends. You could scroll forever and ever and ever, which that is harming attention spans. But the easiest way to put it is we have the chemicals in our brain, the neurotransmitters, and they fire during different situations. When we are in person with our friends, our family, just any general social interaction that may be positive, the neurotransmitter that is being released is called oxytocin, and they also call that like the trust hormone, the bonding hormone. So when you give your when you give Katie a hug, the oxytocin is releasing when your kids make you laugh and you're spending time with your kids. However, when you're on your phone and you're getting the hearts flashing across the screen and you're seeing the like count go up, that's more activating the dopamine system, which we know is associated with addiction. That's like slot machines. You think that next time you're going to win big and you're watching everything flash, and when you finally win and all the coins come flying on the screen, you're getting a dopamine rush, and that happens with other types of drug addictions as well. Um, so an overactive dopamine system is increasing your addictive behavior and addictive traits, and that can happen with the phone. And it's not necessarily a clinical social media addiction or a phone addiction, but when your phone is dinging constantly, like you said, even with the Amber Alert, you're getting like a rush of something that is not the same when Katie calls you from down the hallway.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. So like kids are getting, they're getting that like whenever they want,
Yeah,
that dope, almost like a dope, almost like, I guess, a drug, like a dopamine hit in a way,
yeah,
whenever they want, wherever they want now. There's really
yes,
no stopping it.
exactly. And I'm looking in my notes right now. I wish I could find it right away, but basically I can find the exact stat when I scroll long enough, but basically a big thing is like the really quick, fast-paced movements on the screen. So, for example, the show Coco Melon, for example,
Yeah.
it's bright colors. The frame changes like every 2 seconds. When you're on your phone now, you can do everything in two times speed. If you don't like a video that you're watching, you just scroll to the next one. And that's just shortening your attention span. You're conditioning yourself to have a shorter attention span in general.
Well, what would you think? Because like the attention span thing. Like I've been saying this for a while. Like it's almost like we need to teach kids how, how to be bored, as
Yeah.
opposed to like trying to, even as teachers, like we're always thinking of all these new ideas to engage. And it's almost like, yeah, I get that to a point, but like kids also need to know how to be bored. And I'm thinking of like different ways that you can almost like I think something like fishing. I think that's
Yeah.
a good. I think even back in the day, like going to church. I'm sorry, like it was boring, but it was a good way that like, hey, we had to go. There was no outs, and like you're learning how to be bored. Where like now all this stuff is so instantaneous. I guess my question to go with that is like, what do we do? Like,
Yeah.
what do we do? Is it just as simple as take away the phones? Like, or is it as simple as even in school, like go back to books as opposed to the iPad where now they can access whatever they want? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
what would be your like philosophy on that? I guess.
So, yeah, so I have a pretty extensive developmental background, even though I'm not a developmental psychologist, and I do know that a lot of these issues that are happening are preventing the traditional developmental milestones that kids go through. So up to age 7 is there's a critical period where you're learning all of these social skills and executive skills and motor skills and everything like that. So a big problem during COVID when daycares were not open, the very young kids did not have the opportunity of like free play and exploration and like even just in a preschool, even if me, a little kid, I'm not misbehaving, if I watch my classmate misbehave and get disciplined, I'm like clocking that, I guess. Like you're learning through observation and you're learning through experiences as a kid. Like obviously you might do something that would upset your parents, but you're learning that and you're learning how to be creative. And I think it's really important for parents to limit it in a way. I know it can be difficult, especially if you have a busy schedule, but when we were kids, we had the basic video games, but we were still like playing outside. And I think it's like a larger issue as a whole because um maybe Jimmy wants to play with his friend, but his friend is at home playing video games and doesn't want to come outside. That's not necessarily like on Jimmy, you know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Um, I just think there needs to be a greater awareness to incorporate those things in. And also, I encourage parents of young children to be actively referencing the developmental milestones um, that your children should be making, both socially, like I said, executive function, motor, and all of that, and just see if they're on track, and if not, see how you can adjust, and just make sure that they are getting the necessary face-to-face interaction and play and learning from mistakes and coming up with ideas and being proud of themselves and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and like, so specifically with phones, would you say like there should be like an age, like a set age that, I mean, we're not going to let them at least till high school. But even then, I'm like, I don't know, like it just seems like such bad problems can result from that.
I If anything, I hope your kids don't see this and get mad that I that I
Yeah,
say it.
yeah.
But um I think the bigger problem here is unmonitored social media for kids. I don't think kids should have social media. Obviously, that's just my own opinion, but it gets into like that wishy-washy territory when you start getting into adolescence, but also like you need to be aware of what your kids are seeing, whether it's intentional or not intentional, and also who they are interacting with.
Yeah.
Um, because you never know, honestly. I think that's like the biggest thing is to just be aware and monitor it and like if you have an adolescent kid who's starting to show symptoms of like being depressed or disliking themselves or being irritable, it might be because of what they're engaging with or who they're engaging with, whether, and I don't mean strangers necessarily, I mean like if there's cyberbullying going on, or like I said, if all their friends are constantly hanging out without them and posting about it, that could be something that you should check that could kind of inform what's maybe going on.
Yeah, no, and I think that makes sense. And I guess the other question, and it's kind of, you're getting married now, so you haven't had to deal with this, but like I work with like younger teachers, and some of them are talking about how like dating and like has just been destroyed. Like one woman like is like, no one comes up to me, and she's like, whatever. No one comes up to me like in the bar anymore. She's like, no one goes up to anyone anymore. Like
Yeah,
it's all over the screen. And you hear all this research now too about how like males in particular are becoming way more asocial. Like they're not trying to date, like they're dating like their little cyber person that they're looking at every single day.
yeah,
Like I, I don't know. Have you heard of that with like regards to like your friends, like where they're having a tough time navigating that because of the
yeah.
phones, because of the social media?
There's like, I know that there's like Facebook groups of people like posting the guys that they're talking to. And I mean, obviously, some of it is like to keep women safe and all of that, but there's also like, imagine if every single ex-girlfriend you ever had all came in a room and told your new girlfriend everything. And I think that there's a lot of like people are so scared, which rightfully so, but everything's out there now. And like
Yeah,
you're able to find every single detail about someone. You're able to see what they interact with, and I know that can be difficult because when you meet someone organically, you're just seeing them face to face at face value. You're learning more about them, but it's like now with online, you can get the whole report basically. Um, and I think like you said, I'm in a good relationship now. I am getting married. Prior to this, I was still concerned about how I was perceived online, and I kind of gave that up before JT and I were together, but I can imagine that it is exhausting to have to maintain that because you feel like you need to, you know?
yeah,
Um, and that could take a toll on your self-esteem like a lot. It definitely does not help.
yeah. Wait, since you mentioned JT, I want you to shamelessly plug his coffee
Oh
company
yeah.
right now.
Okay. BoteroCoffee.com. He sells coffee.
Uh-huh.
He works very hard to sell coffee, so it's very good. He's very involved. He shakes the hand of every farmer that they get their beans from, all of that. But
And he
we,
goes down to Colombia, right, to do it?
yeah, yes, he does quite often, actually. He's always down there. Yeah, so support if you can. If you can't buy coffee, then follow them on Instagram. Um, we're supporting each other. I quickly get into this. It's hard to have a partner who's traveling a lot and you want them to pursue their dream and start a business and be an entrepreneur. The amount of support he has given me throughout everything is like I can't even speak on it. It's just overwhelming. And I resonated a lot with something you said about with Katie, how her it was one of your first episodes about how our side of the family was not experienced with mental health. You didn't know anyone in the family who had depression, and she had to learn like with you. And I feel that's the same for JT. He's not afraid of anything, and I've become afraid of everything, and
Yeah.
he's learning. And so I really resonated with that. So I feel very lucky to have such a supportive partner.
Yeah, he's like your Katie.
Yeah.
Plus the good coffee though.
Yeah, we have lots of
Yeah.
coffee over here.
I guess, is there any other like major points that you wanted to talk about with regards to your research or anything that you think would be valuable?
Hmm. I guess my main point that I always end everything with is social media and our phones and our computers should be used as a tool, not as a replacement. It's an assistive tool, just like with any type of automation, you need to not overly rely on it. You don't want your pilot to be asleep at the front just because autopilot's on. So you don't want to do
Yeah.
that yourself either with your phone.
Well, that makes sense too in terms of like the AI and stuff. What I've been saying is like I think that like chat GPT, like I think all of that is awesome if you've already learned how to think and if you've already learned how to write. If you've already learned how to do that stuff, I just wonder what that's going to do to like young people who like they just automatically have that. Like, are they going to learn to do those things?
I feel
Because
very strongly about this.
yeah, like as like an addition, like for me as an addition, it's awesome. Like, oh hey, I'm gonna write this. Hey, maybe I can reword this. How can I do like that? I think is pretty cool. But like if it's like you're never learning how to think for yourself, I just see that being disastrous.
Yeah, I have an analogy for that from human factors back to the pilot example. So, if a pilot relies too much on its automation, on autopilot, you can get something called automation-induced complacency, where since you are relying so much on this automation, over time you're losing these skills. So if something goes wrong in the automation, you no longer can quickly do the math, you don't remember the formulas, you can't technically fix it. I think that that's a huge risk for people who are using ChatGPT to do everything for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that like it's the greatest thing that has ever come to this world. I don't have to do anything anymore. But you can't use ChatGPT when you're in a face-to-face job interview.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Or anything where you have to like communicate
Yeah,
to other people, like you need to be able to do that. Um, all right, I guess last thing I wanted to say was like where are you going? Like what is the path for Maggie Doheny? Like what is the career path? Like what do you see yourself
yeah.
doing?
I would like to be a research scientist or research consultant in industry. Um, I won't plug myself too hard, but I can do anything anyone needs if you're looking for a consultant. Um, I am interested in startups. I am honestly, I feel like I'm graduating in July, so I'm getting married and then graduating 2 weeks later. So that's a lot of life events in one span of time. Um, but I feel like the world is my oyster. This conversation was very helpful because I'm able to see how much I've grown since I was in such a really dark place, and I did that through the support of my family and friends, but mainly like on myself. I never lost sight of my goal. And even now in my PhD program, it's been really challenging. I have lots of ex like a lot of responsibilities, a lot of different roles. Um, I entered candidacy a year and a half early. Um, so I guess my escape from anything bad that's happening in life, I just put it into my work, which is good, but also I'm learning that I need to take time for myself and relax and all of that. But um yeah, I'm just looking forward to whatever is next for me.
Yeah, well, I guess too. Sorry, I know I said that was going to be it, but I
No, it's okay.
when you were thinking of that, like I was talking, I was kind of wondering like why this works for me, like why it makes me feel better to talk about all this stuff. And I think I had this school social worker on the other day, and she was like, "Well, I think you're like almost explaining it to yourself. And
Yeah.
like by explaining it to yourself, you're also explaining it to other people. and you're kind of like making sense out of something that
Yeah.
didn't make sense to you. Do you get that with like some of this, like with your research on like all the social media and the phone stuff and all that? Like, are you trying to make sense of stuff that happened in your past almost at
I
times?
th I think I'm trying to more so like spread the awareness because as I said, digital technology is just only becoming more prevalent now. And I don't want people to deal with like how I've felt on social media and things like that. But it happens to a lot of people and it's not even intentional. Like I could maybe a picture I posted of myself where I looked really good made someone feel terrible. Like you
Yeah.
don't know. You don't know. Not saying I look really good, but you know what but I think it's just people need to like be aware of what this is actually doing because it's so ingrained in our life now. Like you're not thinking about negative consequences on your actual like brain biology when you're on your phone. And I think people just need to be aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I just want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. As I always say to close, I say by sharing your story like Maggie has, not only do you help others, but hopefully you got some feel good out of it as well. Because for me, I end up helping myself when I do it because that's the Melee way.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. I'll end this really. Hold on.